All right, let's bring in Dan Perry, who's a former editor of the Associated Press in Europe, the Middle East and Africa. He's also the publisher of the Ask Questions Later on Substack. Joins us now from Tel Aviv. Dan, good to have you with us again. So what do you think of this? Is this Netanyahu floating a balloon, just kind of testing the water for an international reaction to such a plan? Or is it to pressure Hamas into a deal, or does he actually mean it?
Honestly, Nick, no one knows. It could be a ruse, and I think a ruse is unlikely to work in pressuring Hamas, because Hamas is nihilistic and they don't care about anyone dying. It could be an effort to placate his far-right coalition partners while he buys time. It could be an effort to scare the international community into acting a little bit differently than it might otherwise do. Because even if they agree to reoccupy Gaza, I suspect the proposed implementation would be in stages. Initially, they would encircle Deir al-Balach and Gaza City, where the still populated areas that they haven't gone into yet, and so forth. And there would be time for the world community to react. And he knows very well, Netanyahu does, that the Israeli public and the entire military and security establishment opposes an actual complete takeover of all of Gaza in the sense of long-term or permanent occupation of and administration of 2 million people. Israel's not equipped for that. That promises to be a forever war, a massive insurgency, more loss of life on all sides, and also a likely sacrificing of the lives of the remaining hostages.
And what about the policy that was mooted by Netanyahu and his far-right coalition, and also Donald Trump to a certain degree, about pursuing the route, pushing out Palestinians from Gaza out of their homeland?
It's ridiculous. I don't think too many people think that 2 million people are going to get up and go. And if they do, in a situation where their lives have been rendered unlivable because of the physical destruction of the infrastructure and of their homes in Gaza, no one in the world, except for maybe Trump, is going to see that as a voluntary migration, but rather as a compelled ethnic cleansing. I think some might leave. And by the way, I think allowing Gazans to leave as refugees on a temporary basis might actually be the humane thing to do and might be needed to create pressure on Hamas. I would think that might be part of a more humane and more clever way to get Hamas to step aside, rather than going in there with guns blazing and leading to all this death and destruction, because I don't think Hamas wants to see the even partial depopulation of the Strip. But no, to answer your question, I don't think that's the solution, and I frankly doubt Netanyahu is stupid enough to think any such thing. His extreme right flank that has the ability to bring the government down and therefore has leverage certainly does want that. And they also want the resettlement of Gaza with Jews. But that position in Israel is very unpopular. I would give it maybe 20% support.
What do you think about this persistent flow of images and stories of tragedy emanating out of Gaza and what it does to Israel's international reputation? What is the legacy for Israel of all of this, and for Netanyahu?
It obviously harms Israel's legacy very, very much. For the record, I do not think this is a genocide, because there is no intent to destroy the people. But are there war crimes being committed? That's a whole different question. And I think Israel looks very, very bad when it's clear that it ramps up the humanitarian aid when the pictures get bad enough. And that suggests that they have not been allowing in all that can go in or all that is needed. And that's a very bad look. It's not a moral policy. I think when you hear the Israeli opposition, led by Yair Lapid, condemning the government, this is very much part of it. I think most people in Israel are quite distressed about the suffering brought upon the people of Gaza, even though the feeling is strong that all of this was compelled by Hamas, and to a certain degree, the war was not only justified but inevitable in an effort to get Hamas to step aside. And I think many Israelis are sort of surprised that under these circumstances, when things are so bad for the people of Gaza, that Hamas doesn't surrender, basically, and acquiesce to the demand of the Arab League and of Qatar and Egypt just last week, that they step down and disarm. I don't really see this ending up in a good place for anyone, including and maybe especially the Palestinians, if that does not occur. But I do think most Israelis, nonetheless, would agree to end the war, get back the hostages, and then try to force Hamas out in some other way. And I think that way is really important for everyone to focus on. I think it needs to go through two scenarios. One where Hamas can stay in charge of the ruins of Gaza and try to explain themselves to their people, and only humanitarian and medical aid go in, but no reconstruction. The other is Hamas agrees to the Arab demand, the Israeli demand, the Western demand that it disarm and step aside, in which case a monumental global historic aid package to make an example of Gaza, an example of what can happen when jihadists are pushed aside.
Well, what we do
Will
know
come
is
to
that
the
aid is
Palestinians.
desperately needed, and it has to happen just as soon as it possibly can. Dan, we'll leave it there for now. Thanks
Absolutely.
very much. Dan Perry speaking to us there
Thank
from
you.
Tel Aviv. Thank you.